In the summer of 2024, the relationship between India and Bangladesh, two of South Asia's most connected neighbors, was just completely turned on its head. What looked like a student protest quickly spiraled into a full-on regime change, and just like that, a new, totally unpredictable situation blew up on India's eastern border. So, what on earth happened? Let's break it down. We're going to start with this quote because it really gets right to the point. The view from people who are watching this closely is that this was not some protest that just spun out of control. No. This was, by all accounts, a planned, deliberate operation. And that changes everything. Now, to really get why the events of August 2024 were such a massive shock, you first have to understand the decades of history that came before it. This wasn't a perfect relationship that suddenly broke. It was always a really delicate and often pretty tense balancing act. Yeah, this relationship has always had this kind of split personality. On one side, you have these incredibly powerful bonds, forged in the fire of the 1971 Liberation War. But on the other side, just under the surface, there's always been this constant friction, these really serious, difficult issues that have been a problem for decades. And we're not talking about small disagreements here. I mean, this is stuff like the very lifeblood of the region, water from shared rivers like the Ganga and the Teesta. And then you've got this massive, ridiculously porous border that's been a highway for everything from illegal migration to drug trafficking and even insurgents. These are the chronic headaches that have always tested the relationship. And here's a really crucial point. India being worried about instability in Bangladesh, that's not new. Not at all. The idea that chaos next door could be a direct threat has been a central part of New Delhi's strategic playbook for almost 50 years. And this just says it all. What you're looking at is a declassified CIA memo from all the way back in 1975. This was written just after the assassination of Bangladesh's founding leader. And even then, American intelligence was already gaming out the possibility of an Indian military intervention. And check out this map from that same document. It literally maps out potential military routes for Indian forces. Now, let's be super clear. This is history, it's not some current war plan. But it shows you just how deep-seated India's security interests are in having a stable Bangladesh. It's a strategic concern that has been there for a very, very long time. So that brings us to the summer of 2024, and the chain of events that would unravel 15 years of relative stability, setting the stage for a really dramatic and, for India, a hostile regime change. I mean, the speed of this timeline is just wild. It all kicks off in June with a legitimate student protest over job quotas. But by the middle of July, it explodes into violence. The army gets sent in, but they basically do nothing. And then, bam, the absolute tipping point on August 5th. The army chief tells the prime minister his soldiers will not open fire to restore order. That was it. Her fate was sealed. A few days later, she's out of the country and a whole new government is in. So here's the key switch. The original student movement, it got hijacked. The leadership was taken over by Jamaat-e-Islami, which is a hardline Islamist political party, and their very aggressive student wing. That was the moment this stopped being a student protest and became a political takeover. And if you want to understand the sheer chaos that allowed this to happen, just look at this number. Over 12,000 firearms were looted from police stations. More than 400 police stations were attacked. This wasn't just law and order breaking down, it was a systematic takedown of the state's security forces, creating total anarchy. And that brings us to how a lot of analysts in the region are describing this. The word you hear isn't revolution, it's coup. Specifically, a coup led by Islamist political groups that, let's be honest, could never have pulled it off without the army basically deciding to stand aside and let it all happen. Okay, so why is this such a huge deal for India? Because the new government didn't just come in and change things at home, it immediately started to reverse decades of foreign policy, creating what looks to New Delhi like a massive flashing red light right on its doorstep. The speed of this turnaround is just breathtaking. I mean, within weeks, they lifted restrictions on trade and visas with Pakistan that had been in place for ages. They're talking about military cooperation again, and maybe the most symbolic slap in the face. They're actively rewriting the history of the 1971 war to basically erase India's crucial role in Bangladesh's creation. And this line from a Pakistani defense analyst just says it all. The goal here isn't just normal relations, it's an ideological reunion, this idea of two countries, one nation. For India, this is like a strategic nightmare from 1971 coming back to life. And inside Bangladesh, things are just as bad. Just look at the difference in these numbers. Right after the government fell, there was this horrific wave of violence against religious minorities. The new government eventually admitted to, 88 incidents? But reporters and human rights groups on the ground were counting over 1,600, maybe even more than 2,000 attacks. The difference is staggering. But through all of this pivot to Pakistan, the rewriting of history, the horrific attacks on minorities, India's official response has been, incredibly restrained. They're keeping the diplomatic channels open, calling for things to calm down, and asking for the protection of all communities. But being restrained doesn't change the facts on the ground. As this new interim regime digs in and consolidates its power, the future of Bangladesh and the whole region has just never been more up in the air. And if you look at their actions, it's pretty clear this isn't some neutral caretaker government just trying to get to the next election. You've got mobs being used to force out judges and election officials. You have convicted terrorists being let out of prison. The media's being silenced. Journalists are being arrested. And on top of it all, they're demanding to rewrite the constitution before anyone gets to vote. So now you have this huge political fight in Bangladesh. Most of the political parties are saying, hey, we need elections now to restore democracy. But the interim government and its backers are saying, nope, not so fast. We have to do all these deep reforms first. And a lot of people see that for what it probably is, a stalling tactic, to avoid an election they might lose while they cement their grip on power. Which brings us right back to where we started with another stark warning from Veena Sikri. This chaos isn't just a Bangladeshi problem. For India, it is a direct and immediate threat along a massive border, with a very real chance it could spill over and cause instability inside India itself. And that leaves us with the million-dollar question. For the last decade, a stable Bangladesh has been a cornerstone of stability in the region. But now, with a hostile government in charge, old enemies becoming new friends, and new threats popping up every day, the fallout from this unraveling could seriously reshape the geopolitics of the entire region. What this new chapter holds, nobody knows, and that's what's so dangerous.